With Dota 2 being such a vast and massive game, there's just so much a player has to learn and get to grip with before they can even start to feel comfortable playing the game in the first place. There's many subjects that need to be covered to get a proper grasp of Dota 2. What I personally think is the most interesting is that for many of us, we take the more basic things and concepts of the game for granted. And sometimes, even if you're extremely good at the game, going back to the roots of how to do very basic things efficiently can have a huge positive on you as a player. Therefore, in this video, I truly wanted to take things back to basics and provide something that is always applicable irregardless of what kind of role you're playing in your current game. Laning fundamentals. Cree Back Row is such a core part of Dota 2. From how lane creeps behave to how jungle creeps act, it's an art in itself to know all the deeper layers of how it behaves and how to use it to your advantage. When it comes to laning, Cree Back Row plays a massive part because it's usually always the root cause of why lanes are pushing either Radiant side or Dire side. In layman terms, if a player within close proximity to creeps decide to perform a regular right-click attack, creeps are coded so that they perceive the attacker as the current biggest threat and as a result, will turn towards the attacking hero. This causes two things to happen. 1. You will take an unnecessary amount of damage, especially if you're a ranged hero since you don't possess native block chance like melee heroes do. 2. Because the creeps aren't clashing with the opposing creep wave anymore, but with you instead, it means that your creeps are now beating them over the head without any retaliation whatsoever. This causes the lane to naturally move towards the enemy, something you are on average not very interested in, since they'll now be closer to their tower and you further from yours. This technique is also seen at the start of most any given lane, as people use Cree Back Row as a method of pulling melee creeps towards their own range creep, the largest damage dealer in the wave, so that the creep flow can be on their side. Remember that you can use this trick anywhere. Even if an enemy hero isn't physically present on your lane, you can use any enemy hero that you have vision of to perform this trick. It's quite powerful when utilized right. Due to just how volatile the aggro system is, however, it's important that whenever you see someone, you don't just right-click them right away. A clever player will move closer to their target, especially if they're melee, before they proceed to right-click, and certain ranged heroes will be more prone to hitting from the side of trees or at a distance where it doesn't cause the creep wave to gain attraction. As a last bit, certain heroes possess orb attacks that don't cause aggro to generate as a result of it. Just to mention a few: Silence's Glaives, Bounty's Janata, Outworld's Orb, and Kunga's Tidebringer. If you've ever found that you couldn't breathe on lane due to a hero spamming a certain ability and chasing you down without drawing creep attention, there's a good chance they were utilizing an orb attack to achieve just that. Plenty of players don't utilize their mana enough, and this often is a recurring issue for people that like to support. Your mana is what usually allows you to effectively play your hero, some more than others. In laning stage, I find a good way to describe mana as a resource to be spent when available, as it's a method to force the enemy to spend their own resource in turn, tangos for healing. This is also why you'll often see heroes like Jakiro dominate early lanes. He has a very high mana regeneration, can spam his spells pretty freely, and if he keeps up the usage of his mana spending to pressure the enemy, they're often forced to buy much more regen than they'd like or suffer the consequences of not doing so. Under almost no circumstances should you ever stand with 100% of your mana pool ready during the initial laning stage of the game. If not using a Hand of Midas when it's off cooldown is inefficient, and it is, then not using your mana is just as bad. This doesn't mean you should just empty your tank as fast as you can and run back to base though, but rather make sure that you're not losing out on free mana regeneration. We don't eat a tango and then stand still for 10 seconds if we're full HP. Likewise, there's no need to hide in trees as a disruptor and look at the enemy with menace if you have 100% of your mana and can give them a taste of the occult crafts. It's always been part of the game, but now more than ever, pulling really is the definer of early game laning stage in particular. I've gone on record to say something akin to, if last hitting as a core is a principle behind playing as a core in lane, then pulling is a core principle of playing support, and I stick by that notion. Pulling is extremely good at a variety of things. It changes the creep equilibrium of the lane, leaning it closer towards your tower, and thus, to safety. It gives you, the puller, a small amount of farm and XP, usually full XP as well, for doing so. And it forces the enemy to deal with it, either by the opposite support trying to deny you from doing it in the first place, or by him and his core trying to kill you for doing so. Be aware though that you shouldn't just always pull. There are times where your carry might be out of position, and if the enemy catches wind of you doing a pull, it means that, by definition, you won't be close enough to help your carry if they do go for him. This will end with a very angry carry and a pull that does more harm than good. If you're a core player, you can also use pulling to your advantage. This isn't strictly something only a support player can do, so if you're not busy last hitting and an opportunity presents itself to pull a creep wave, it's more often than not beneficial to do so. A slightly more advanced strategy is creep dragging. This is done by going behind the enemy tier 1 tower, snatching up the creep wave running towards the lane before cleverly dragging it with you, usually all the way down between your tier 1 and tier 2 tower. This in turn will cause the creep wave that you drag to clash with your incoming creep wave, and because they're busy fighting there, you can now rather safely deny/last hit creeps there, and the lane flow will move back in front of your tier 1 tower. It's a win-win. A staple of any MOBA game out there, harassing is done by utilizing either your abilities or your right-click attacks in order to inflict damage onto your enemies. Basic, right? Much like mana is something to be spent, harassing is also something added into that mix in order to achieve the ultimate goal of lowering the enemy's health. This isn't just to kill them though, but also put a sense of fear and dread into them. If you prove to the enemy that you're willing to play offensive, harass aggressively in order to lower their health pool, they'll be a lot less inclined to play effectively themselves. Many players end up running scared as a result of this. How many times haven't you had a phantom assassin at level 2 throw up her arms and go into jungle? This was probably a result of feeling like she got threatened too much and saw the safer option to just go jungle. Different heroes harass by different means. Slark utilizes his passive, Lina hits you from the other end of the court, and Ogre rubs himself up against you silly while touting a stupid amount of armor and natural regeneration. Knowing how your hero is able to best harass and play offensively with their given lane partner will give you a massive advantage. How could I not include this even if there's only 5 slots? This is what essentially sets Dota 2 off from most other MOBAs out there. In League of Legends for an example, denying isn't even a mechanic. Clever use of last hitting is key, and it's just about as fundamental as you can get. The way this has worked over the years has changed significantly however, so proper understanding and use of the mechanic is as important as it ever was. When your initial creep wave spawns, it will have 3 melee creeps and 1 range creep. Now, while they're all juicy in their own right, it's that range creep that's the creme de la creme of the entire squad. Why? Because it carries significantly more value than the rest of them. A melee creep has a bounty range of 34 to 39 with a 57 experience per kill, while the range creep has a 43 to 52 bounty range with a whopping 69 experience per kill. This is why, when you see higher level players, it's not uncommon to see Alina use her abilities as a support to claim the range creep, or Rubric Fatebolt snatching it. It's just that important that the range creep in particular doesn't get denied out by the enemy. Denying is such an integral part of Dota 2 because of how powerful it is. If you deny a creep from the enemy, it's not 20%, it's not 35%, but a whooping 50% of their XP gone from that creep alone. That's not even mentioning how the gold from the creep is entirely lost as well. 100% gold loss and 50% XP loss to the enemy. Yeah, a player is wise to make use out of that. By clever use of pulling, harassing, and slick decision making, you can turn an otherwise mediocre or downright bad lane into a winning one crazy fast if you get the flow of lasting and denying down to a T.
You were not supposed to be gone this long.
That's 5 laning fundamentals over with. I tried to keep things as relatively light and brief as I could in this video. The reality of this subject is that it's something I could talk about for hours on end, but that doesn't exactly translate to the best possible YouTube content. Did you like the video? Do you have any questions, requests, or something you'd like me to cover? By all means, throw me a comment on this video. I'd love a thumbs up, perhaps even a follow. But more important, I hope you found the 5 covered topics interesting, and it's my hope that they end up helping you out on your Dota 2 laning journeys. Like they say, there is no better time than the present, so brush up on your basics and become a better player as a result. Good luck out there.